Missy Bird.
How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm
Like, that's a lie, bitch.
gonna take this 1 hour at a time. I was for a minute being like, let's just take this one day at a time. This pandemic, we're just gonna go one day at a time. But I've decided 1 hour at a time is serving me better.
I think that's fair. I feel like last week was a decade.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, interesting. I have
I've
some
been joking.
feelings.
I've been joking. I have this just a couple feelings. I have this great meme with Jean-Luc Picard on it that says every morning in 2020, and at the bottom it says damage report. Because that's how I feel.
Yeah. I'm loving your short hairs, though. They're very cute.
Thanks. Isn't it awesome? Did you know that gray hair grows faster than brown hair?
That does not surprise me. I feel like I do know that. Like,
They're sticking out. I'm like, what is happening?
what is happening?
For the people that view this, we recorded it because you were supposed to be going on a fine adventure to Scotland, but then we had a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Dang it. So thank you for joining me, any hoozle.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
So I've been doing a series on feminism and life and all the things. So because of your work in coaching and in politics, I wanted to bring you on here to talk about you. Yeah. So the first question I want to ask you is, what drives you to continue your work in the face of obstacles? Ooh. And tell people a little bit about who you are first before we dive into that.
I'm so glad you asked me this. So I'm a master certified life coach. And I call myself a get shit done coach.
Nice.
Because what I've found, and especially for feminist women who want to change the world, I feel like our time, you don't know any of those? I know. Who are they? Where are they? They don't exist. What is this unicorn? But what I found is that when we are thinking and getting super bogged down in the day-to-day world, the things that are happening, and I think this pandemic is an especially great way in which to see all the thoughts and feelings that come up. Yes. When we get too bogged down in that, we struggle to get things done, and we struggle to use our voice in the world. We struggle to make a difference. We struggle to get our writing done, get our painting done, get our workshops done, get our courses done, all of these things that we want to birth into the world to make a difference and to change the patriarchy. We struggle when we feel like this suffocation.
Yes.
And so that is the work that I do with women in the world, is essentially like how to get your amazing, badass, feminist, patriarchy smashing project out into the world, because we got a fucking world to change, and it's going to look a little different on the other side of this motherfucker, right?
It sure is, my friend. It sure is.
So the way that I keep going through obstacles is I remind myself of my purpose in the world, my why. You and I have talked about this multiple times, but I remind myself of why what I'm doing is so valuable. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my phone dinging. I apologize.
I can't hear your phone dinging. I can hear the hail starting out my window, but I can't hear your phone dinging.
Well, good. So I remind myself of my purpose. And then I remind myself of the value of that purpose in the world for every single client that I touch. And then the impact that their work is going to have in the world, so that my brain would love to just make it about all me all the time.
Yeah, sure.
And what I remind myself of is, yes, but I have 20 clients and they're all amazing badasses. And when they get over that one little procrastination hurdle or perfectionism hurdle or fear of being seen or fear of failing hurdle, the impact they're going to have on the world is going to be so big.
So good.
It's so amazing. And so I see obstacles as opportunities to work through our shit. And I think this pandemic is such a beautiful opportunity to see, because there's always going to be something happening in the world that our brain would like to point to as the reason why we can't do the thing. And right now, this one is just really pervasive and really big. And so it's such a great opportunity to see all the thoughts that come up and all the feelings that come up that keep us stuck in inaction. So we can be like, okay, well, let's make peace with those and find our center again.
Yeah.
And remember the impact that we're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Some shit.
I love that so much. And I love the, just this idea of creating a web of people, because that's really what we do. I think when we create our programs and we create the things that we want to put out into the world as coaches in particular, like we create that web of reach where other people can be free to be living in their divine assignment, as I call it, and really falling into their purpose and their calling so they can go in the world and do that thing. So I love that you brought up that you get to create these people to go out in the world and change. It's so lovely. How do you fight imposter syndrome and feeling inadequate about your skills, education, and ideas?
Such a good question.
You and I have talked about this an awful lot.
We have talked about this a lot. What I find for myself is that imposter syndrome exists in almost everybody.
Yeah.
And especially at the highest levels. So I used to work in the grad school department at the University of Georgia in the English department. And what I found that was so fascinating to me was like the PhDs have to come in and defend their dissertation, right? They are at the very end of what they have to do. Now they've done all the things. All they have to do is go stand in front of 3 people and talk about what they've done. And this is the moment of the most extreme imposter syndrome. I do not belong. I'm like, you've been at this for 5 years. What do you mean? Yeah. And so like at that
awful.
Yeah. And like, so it happens there. It happens at the CEO level. It happens especially for women, the higher and higher we rise, the more imposter syndrome we have, the more we're afraid of what other people are thinking about us.
Yes. And
so once I know in my own mind, when I face it, because I deal with it too, once I know that everybody at every level deals with this is a very human thing, I can sort of take a breath and have compassion for the part of me that's really scared.
Yeah.
And that really feels like maybe I don't belong here.
Yeah. I really love that. I think that so a lot of these questions came from the people who follow me on Facebook, right? So I think it's really interesting because the people who follow me on Facebook are people like you and me with master's degrees and PhDs and, master certified life, all the things. And, or people who don't have any of those things and just have a high school diploma, but they've been living a life and they still have skills and life education and ideas. And I think it's so fascinating that we battle. It doesn't matter where we go or who we are. We still battle that imposter syndrome all the time.
And I think that the most important thing to know is like, that's why we go after those degrees. That's why, part of why I got a master's degree was 1, to prove that I could, and 2, to make better money, because my journalism degree was not going to pay me jack shit. But
I remember when I found out you had a master's degree because you never talked about it. I was like, girl.
I was like, what little thing? That doesn't count. And so like we go after these degrees and we think we need more and more and more education and more credentials and letters behind our name. And we find on the other side of that, well, that was just a piece of paper and reading a book, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really.
Yeah, it truly has to come from within. It has to come from what you believe about yourself and how it's like your inner self concept has to shift.
Yeah.
And so like, once you get that PhD, then you have to sort of double down in your brain on, I'm a doctor. I worked my ass off for that. I earned that. I deserve that. I belong here.
You know what's fascinating about that is PhDs criticize me for calling myself a doctor. Like other PhDs are like, why do you need to say Melissa Bird PhD. You can't say Dr. Melissa Bird. And I'm all, why?
Watch me.
Like, I earned this. I broke myself for this, so I'm going to call myself whatever the hell I damn well want.
And you can.
Yeah. I can. That's why it's on my license.
Bye.
That's why it's on my license plate. Dr. Bird.
I love it.
Oh, love that. I really do. Okay. So, do you have one or more definable moments on your journey, or have you always been this way?
Oh God, no. Yes, no. I didn't answer that.
We all know what you meant there. We all know what you meant.
I think the thing that really shook the cobwebs off of my life was getting breast cancer in 2011. And
how old were you?
34. And that opened my eyes to the fact that so much of what we think matters in the world doesn't fucking matter. And
louder for the people in the back.
Right? So much of what you think matters in the world doesn't fucking matter. What people think about you, what you do or don't do, most of it doesn't fucking matter. Your master's degree, I had just finished my master's degree. I was like, well, that was a waste of time. Why did I do that?
What the hell?
But it broke me open in so many beautiful ways that felt terrible at the time. And what I didn't know at the time was like, my whole life, my whole way of living is being challenged. And this is a period of growth, and it fucking hurt. And it sucked a lot. But who I became on the other side of it, and it took me a while to get there. It probably took me, let's be honest, like 7 years to truly start to become who I am today and to work my way through that. But it was so worth it. And I gained so much wisdom about myself and about the world and about what I want and what's possible for everybody. Like, I will never use any sort of circumstance, and that's what I call that breast cancer thing, that a fact in the world that happened to me, a circumstance. I will never use anything like that to hold me back again. And so I see this pandemic as like, this would be a great way for people to be like, everything's falling apart, fuck it, I give up.
Well, I mean, I think that's wisdom. Like, it's such good wisdom for what's happening today, because, you know, the thing that's bothering me the most is not being able to be with people, because I am like, you know me, I want to be around all the people all the time. I'm that girl, right? So, but I work from home, so that part hasn't been a problem, right? It's the fact that I can't leave and go hang out with my people that's driving me up a wall, right?
Yeah.
I also am seeing this as such a huge opportunity. Like, I have never worked so hard these last 2 weeks that I have in the last 2 years, right? And I love what you said about it being an opportunity. Like, so many people, I think, see traumatic events and illness as a death sentence or something that is going to interrupt their lives forever. But what you did with breast cancer is you eventually, now that you're on the other side of it, took that journey as a way to know who you wanted to be in the world. And you talked about it being a circumstance. And this next question falls right into that. So what are 3 specific and tangible habits and techniques you use to counter negative self-talk?
So good. So I teach a life coach tool called the model. And essentially what we do, it's the model of human behavior. So a thing happens, a circumstance happens, that's the top of the model. That's the C line. It's just a fact. And so this week I've been putting pandemic in it, because I have a human brain, and human brains are still really like in the caveman era. And my brain senses that there's this thing that's happening out there, and it wants to like keep running to the edge of the cave door and be like, is there a tiger? Is he here? Is it over there? Is it over there? Is it over there? Is it there?
It's everywhere.
everywhere, right? And so what's happening is that I'm having a thought about it, and that's creating a feeling. And the feeling is like fear, panic, worry, anxiety. And that's leading me to take an action, which is the next piece of that model. And the action that I'm taking, and what I've noticed my brain doing today was like, just scroll, 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 Facebook, scroll, scroll, scroll. And I was like, oh, this is really counterproductive. I should probably go work out. And I took my phone up to my bike and turned on my bike and stood there and scrolled. And I was like, okay, what's happening right now?
You mean life coaches still do the same habits over and over again?
It's true. It's true.
So what results did you get from that, Melanie?
We're also humans. And the result that I got was that I stayed worried and I stayed in my fear brain.
Yes.
And I didn't do the things that would help me get out of it. And so I self-coach myself. I run myself through this. Circumstances create our thoughts. Things happen. We have a thought about it. Our thoughts create our feelings drive our actions get us results. And so I coach myself on that model, all the thoughts that I have about this thing.
Yeah.
And then I switch into, so just to see, this is my default cave person brain. This is what my brain has to say about this. It's really freaked out about it sometimes. And then I start to shift into, how do I want to feel?
Yeah.
Or what action do I want to take? Or what result do I want different today? And then I fill in that intentional model. So that I start to get back into my prefrontal cortex and start to think productively and look for the opportunities and get back into possibility for what I could do today. Because otherwise, if I stay in my caveman brain, I will just go eat all the Girl Scout cookies and watch Netflix.
Yeah. And the thing I love about that is that you just said the word possibility, right? Like we want to live a life of possibility. We want to live a life of joy and happiness, even in the face of great fear. Right.
100%.
And so I really love that you talked about creating a model of possibility instead of a model of fear. I was doing a workshop before this all hit, literally the week before things really got bad and around the world. And I was doing this workshop with a friend of mine who's trained in Brene Brown's Dare to Lead program. And so she was showing us a video. And one of the things Brene Brown said is that fear is not the problem, right? That fear, we all fear, we know what fear is. It's the armor we build to protect ourselves from being afraid that creates the inability for us to move forward. And that's what I love about what you were talking about with the model, because it helps you break down that armor so you can see what's really going on and shift into possibility instead of seeds of doubt, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and you asked for 3 things. That was one.
Yeah.
The next thing that I do is I give myself a lot of compassion for who I am, for how I feel, for what I'm thinking. Like I literally have a seat and close my eyes and take a deep breath. And I just send myself, the scared part of me, a lot of love. And I say things like, of course you're scared. You're a human being. This is an uncertain time. This is a very normal response.
Yes.
Of course you're afraid.
Yeah.
It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel this feeling and allow it to exist.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that something's gone wrong. Although you could look at the circumstance and decide something's gone terribly wrong. The truth is, we have pandemics every year. The flu is a pandemic. We have flu season. We know, we expect it, right? Yeah. This is just an unexpected one.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I send myself a lot of love and a lot of compassion. And then the third thing that I do to counter, I don't even want to talk about it like this, but to get my brain to do something that's not negative, is that I ask myself good questions. And so one of them might be, what's possible today? And I start to look at what could be possible in 90 days? What could be possible in a year? Who do I want to be today?
Yeah.
How do I want to show up to the world? And one of the things that I think about, and the way that I ask myself this question is like, what do the best life coaches in the world do in a crisis?
Mm-hmm.
How do they get out of bed?
Mm-hmm.
How do they work out? How
Mm-hmm.
do they think about their schedule?
Yeah.
And that really asked my brain to go find answers that are creative, that are full of possibility and hope.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it just energizes me.
Yeah. Just shifts you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh, uh-huh.
That's who I want to be.
I
Let's go.
have other options. That's
This will
right.
be fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can do that. Totally. So, children, they're home. What is the most misunderstood myth about the word feminism?
I think it's that we only want power, not equality.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh, you just want more for yourself. Like,
Ooh,
yes, and equality.
Yes.
And that more for women doesn't mean less for men.
Mm-hmm.
And more for non-gender conforming people doesn't mean less for anybody else.
Right. And more for Black women doesn't mean less for white women.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
more for Hispanic women doesn't mean less for white women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I think that that's important. And I think I struggled with that word for a while. And my Facebook group is called Badass Feminists Get Shit Done. I had a lot of thoughts about using that word.
Mm-hmm. It's the
like,
big old F word. It's the bigger F word than the actual F word.
I know. And I was like, what will people think if I use that word? Will people still like me if I use that word? Will people judge me if I use that word? Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what though? That's the best big picture word that I can put on who I'm trying to reach and help and support. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I add all of the modifiers on there, that group name is going to be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I make it very, very clear in the description. I do mean all of us. Mm-hmm. And using this word for a specific reason.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah, had a lot of thoughts and a lot of worries about using that word. Mm-hmm. And then I just decided if people have a problem with it, they can come talk to me, and it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay for them to not like it.
Yeah, can you hold on for 1 second? Okay, 3 more questions. Are you ready? This is like the speed round.
Ooh, let's go.
All right. What is the most important thing people need to know about the work you're doing in 2020?
The most important thing that people need to know about the work that I am doing in 2020 is that now is the time to create your thing and get it out into the world. Now is the time. Harness this creative downtime. Harness all of the focus and energy that you can muster. On the other side of this, 60, 90, 120 days from now, the world is going to be a little bit different.
Yes, a lot of bit different.
And if you want a voice in what that change looks like, and if you want to be a part of it, you cannot be huddled in fear. Now is the time to get some shit done, and let's go fuck some shit up.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. Do you have a gratitude practice? And if you do, what is it?
I do, but I am not terribly consistent with it. Simply because my morning and evening practices are a little bit different. They are more getting into what do I believe now? What do I want to believe? What would I believe if I were already where I want to be? And part of that is a lot of gratitude for already where I am. So nice. I do, but I don't. It's not as specific as like, let me list my 5 gratitudes. It's kind of baked into my whole process.
Awesome. Yeah. What is your niggle, your instinct, your gut telling you about what's next?
My gut instinct is that a lot of our systems and structures are about to change in ways that are going to help a lot more people.
I hope you're right, sister.
Like, it feels like a scary teardown, but I think that the creativity and the ingenuity and the innovativeness that's going to come out of this, because here's my belief about the world. My belief is that constraint creates creativity.
Yes.
There is a documentary that I watched with Jack White, and he talked about his creative process and where he came from, and it kind of totally shifted my mindset. And he said that he was really glad that he grew up poor and couldn't afford like a guitar, much less an electric guitar, because it meant that that constraint required him to create his own music his own way. So he had to figure out, how do I build a guitar?
Yeah.
He had to figure out, how do I love music. How do I make music when I don't have any resources? So to me, time of constraint is a time of great creativity, that this is our opportunity to shed all the things that we think are important.
Yeah.
And do the things, focus on the things that are actually important. And so that might be being with your family, and let's see what comes out of that. It might be create a game, and let's see what comes out of that. It might be create a podcast. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It might be create a whole new way that we work and teach and show up to jobs and whole new sectors of jobs. Let's see what happens.
So inspiring.
Yes. It's going to be amazing. I think it's going to suck for a little while. So like, don't think I'm dismissing what's happening.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer. I have a giant lotus on the back of my giant tattoo on the back of my back. That is my strong belief in the world, that like, out of the shit,
lotus. That's right.
Beautiful things are created.
Yes.
But we got to get through the shit first.
Yes. I love that. I love it so much. It's so great. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Yeah, thank you. This was super fun.
How can people find you?
I am at melaniechilders.com. My website is getting a redesign, so if it's not there, don't freak out. Just type in your email address if you want to know what that looks like. And then I am Melanie DC on Facebook, Melanie Childers, or my Facebook page is The Enlightened Badass. My Instagram is The Enlightened Badass. I'm all over the place. Except for Twitter. I don't really love Twitter, so.
I love Twitter. Although right now it makes me angry, so I've had to stay off of it because I get stabby. Anyway, thank you so much for being with me today. I love you so much.
Yeah, I love you. Thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Talk to you soon.
All righty.
Bye. Bye.